and good afternoon, everybody. It's CJ here, and I am currently in a very productive and creative mood. I'm really in the second stage of making a sculpture, which will become better known in the near future. That's me making a promo video for an improv workshop up north. I had forgotten to make a promo, so I did it in the place I was spending the greatest portion of my time, my wood shop in our basement. I built everything in here. The tables, shelves, jigs. The space is a testament to trying new things. So what better way to learn how I created something new than to hear how I figured things out, in my own words, at each stage of the process. The concept was pretty solid, so the first step was construction. I first needed to join a series of boards together in order to make one solid form, and it had to be solid, which meant I needed to rough up each and every side of each board and then glue and join them together with clamps for 2 days. Then it was time to sketch out the actual design. Now this actually proves to be one of the hardest parts because the simpler the design might be, the more challenging it is to get it just right, because even the slightest mistake is going to make the entire form look disjointed, misaligned, or otherwise not good enough. So I needed to be careful. I took constant measurements and did lots of sketching. Stage 3, cutting everything out. I then traced where the best route for the light fixture that was going to be installed in the back of the sculpture was going to go. I needed the light to recede halfway into the back of the sculpture in order to achieve the lighting effect that I wanted. But I don't have a router, which would be the perfect tool to use when routing, but I did have a rotary saw, which essentially works like a drill, except it cuts sideways. It got the job done. Chiseling out pieces of the back, about 3/4 of an inch for the supports, extra supports, to make sure that this thing is actually strong. That's nice. Sanding. This needs to look rustic, so if it looks not like hodgepodge, but like, all the boards look like they're used, and some of them are used in weathered boards and some of them are not. So in order to achieve that look, you need to keep them somewhat rough. However, it's never a bad idea to do at least a little bit of sanding on the corners and the edges, because then at the very least, it's more comfortable to grab and install, which is good, but also gives the light that's going to be passing through it less of a hard surface, which is very good. That means that the wood and the sheen that the wood has, which should be a satin, so not very glossy at all, but still somewhat reflective, is going to then grab whatever light is being cast off of the wall behind it when the light is installed. So that's what I'm up to, in case you were wondering. When I get to corners, I have to use a file so that I can get in there and then take care of the rest of it with the sandpaper, which the sandpaper is 60 grit, and that's another reason why I feel comfortable using sandpaper on something that I want to look rough and rustic, is because it's a really rough sandpaper. Therefore, there's going to be very small lines that will be visible on the slightly rounded surfaces, or the edges, and that's a good thing. So, yeah. I already did all of this on the back side, so just for the sake of making it smoother and making it look a little bit nicer, because I imagine that one day someone, probably me, will end up taking it down to move it or to clean it or something, and when that happens, I wouldn't like it to look terrible. I'd rather it look nice. Anyway, you get the idea. Before and during the sanding process, when I would take breaks, I would take the pieces that I had cut out of the form earlier and use them as testing blocks so that I could try different stain combinations and even different polyurethane and acrylic finishes, from matte all the way to a high gloss. We ended up settling on satin, and then I ended up settling on 4 different stain combinations that made the wood look old and rustic. Some of the boards were already old and weathered naturally, so they already had achieved that look, so all they needed was the satin finish. So at this point, I'm applying stain, or no, I'm not. I am applying polyurethane. I'm using a satin. It is oil-based, which means it's going to be more durable. It takes longer to dry, and it's a little bit tougher than an acrylic. However, it's also less shiny, which, to put it in the words of Joel, is looks like honey dripping over wood, which I don't really like that look either. So we're gonna make it look pretty nice and also make it easy to clean if need be, but not make it look like it's a treat for Winnie the Pooh. Interesting part of this project that was probably the largest challenge, which I also really enjoy. The product of it is this mount. So on one side of this side is going to be the wall, this side is going to be the sculpture. There is a distance of exactly 2 inches from point to point here, and that's exactly what I needed. Now, when it came time to actually create the mounts, I didn't have a design or an idea because I figured, well, I'll figure that out when I come to it, because I couldn't really set my mind as to how I wanted to mount it, especially because the sculpture didn't exist yet. So when I finally did create the sculpture, I then started to realize a little bit more about what it would take in order to hold it up, keep it level and even on the wall, and make sure that it was going to stay between the 1.5 inches and 2 inches distance out from the wall, so that the light in the back can actually have its effect. So in order to do that, I figured I would be able to find something. And I looked in all of the places that I knew you could find mounts, and I'm pretty sure I must have looked almost everywhere. I'm certain I didn't look everywhere, but I looked everywhere that I knew of, and even new places. And then I realized maybe I'm not even looking in the right place. Maybe I'm not looking for the right thing. So I looked everywhere else. It also included making trips, going to Menards, Home Depot, Walmart, O'Reilly's Auto Parts, like everywhere for whatever pieces and bits I could think of that might be able to work as a mount. So what I ended up doing was spending about 36 hours total over the course of 3 days, which was basically 3 whole days of my time that was just looking for some kind of a method of mounting it. And all the while, at the end of that 36 hours, I had something in the back of my head, which was actually the first idea that I came up with, and that idea didn't actually exist, that design. This is a slightly improved version of that design. Now this is very simple. It's slightly loose. It means that if the sculpture's on this side and this is, mounted into the wall, this can stay completely stationary, and then we can have even a little bit of leeway. So it's very forgiving in order to get this on there. And then from the side of the sculpture, then, screw it on. This is an improvement by William Hackbarth, who is my future sister-in-law's brother. And he has a wonderful metal shop, and I got to help him with a little bit of this, but otherwise he just took the design that I had drawn and he improved upon it. Every mounting idea that I had before this, that I looked for, it would be too bulky. It would cast a shadow on the back of the mount, or it would be too weak. Things made out of PVC or wood or very thin metal that otherwise is large sheets that yet again casts a shadow. So there was a lot to do and a lot to figure out, and this is the reason why the sculpture is going to be able to go up and is going to be held nice and tight.
I know that you can't really see me, but the Ampersand logo is going to finally be mounted tomorrow. It's behind me, on top of the yet-to-be-constructed breakfast nook in our yet-to-be-finished kitchen of our house in West Bend. But we're gonna get it into its position tomorrow by the evening, and I'm super happy for it. Almost like it's a character in my life. A character that finally has had his run for 3 seasons, and we finally get to welcome him on to his new career as a big film actor, where everyone can really see him. Congratulations.
I have all my tools ready to go. We're set. So now I'm just waiting for a vehicle that is a little bit larger than the one that I have, because The sculpture is 1/8 of an inch too wide to fit into the back of my Equinox. So we had to work our way around that. And it's my dad. My dad's coming. So he'll be able to fit it in the back of his vehicle. We'll go over to the theater and we will install it. Woohoo! Finally! All right, we're getting there. This is how I'm marking it. Basically, we have each of the studs has been found. So we have a center line, which is the exact center of the wall from top to bottom, and then each of those lines on the outer outline of each piece of painter's tape. The inside of them is a stud, which is what I was able to find. So basically, in order to be sure that you're actually going to get it into a stud, you just have to go into the centermost part of each of those markings. Now, where you see the top, bottom, left, and right, and center lines, that is the basic profile of the sculpture. At the moment it looks taller than it is wide, but that's just a optical illusion based on the fact that I use longer pieces of tape on the side and shorter tape on the top and the bottom. But what's going to happen is that is basically where it's going to be. Not basically, almost exactly. So what I'm going to do is now I then have to take from that center point onto this center point, do all of the markings that are corresponding to those measurements from center, which these mounts will then go on, and then we basically put it up on the wall. We mark exactly where they're going to be, and then we drill them in. Not drill them in, put the screw them in, and then they stay there, and then we can eventually put the whole sculpture up and just screw it in. So I've said mounting and screw way too much today, or not enough. Well, I'm having fun. Guess what? It's up! It's beautiful. Joel, do you approve?
I mean, I have to see it light up before I give my final verdict.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Lights on. Looks pretty neat overall, granted. A little bright in this version. There you go. Kind of see it a little better now. And then turn the lights off. Oh, it just becomes a pure silhouette. That's awesome. It's like I made 3 sculptures. I kind of made 3 things.
It's one of those living sculptures. It's a true artwork that needs to be experienced in multiple ways.
Yeah.
And with that, my project was finished. The job is done. This sigil and testament to a community born from the philosophy of yes and now can begin its very public life. Except this piece is bringing its own spotlight.